COVID was our version of it to flex our leadership muscles, to slap the dragon and see if we really know how to lead in chaos.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Today, we're speaking with the founder and CEO of one of America's fastest growing fitness franchises. He's a sought-after high-performance consultant, a mentor, best-selling author, and self-made entrepreneur. His book, Man Up, How to Cut the Bullshit and Kick Ass in Business, is a powerful guide for anyone who wants to grow a company, make a difference, or launch a new brand. He'll teach you to be resourceful and to use your purpose, passion, mindset, and determination to overcome any adversity. He's a prime example of what it means to live the American dream. So please welcome the guy who revolutionized gym franchising and the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, Mr. Bedros Keuilian, to the Escape Your Limits podcast.
When I was molested as a young boy by two older boys, the byproduct of that was, and I only discovered that when I worked with Kevin, my therapist, in my late 30s. So imagine, for 20 some odd years, I carried that with me. I felt unlovable. I felt broken. I felt unworthy. I didn't let my wife in. I didn't let anyone in. I always felt like all of you were in a room and I was in the hallway just outside that door, is how I felt. And for anyone that's had physical, mental, or sexual abuse, the same part of the brain lights up. The fight or flight area of the brain lights up and stays lit up. And you're always fists up and you have a hard time trusting others. And so you begin to have some level of poor trust towards others, and you don't feel lovable and worthy and deserving. And well, that really dulls the human experience. Mm-hmm. And so the limits that I've been able to break is through the help of a great therapist. And by the way, 1 out of every 3 people have had some kind of physical or mental trauma, and 1 out of every 4 people have had some kind of sexual trauma. Mm-hmm. So just count the 5 of us in this room. Someone's had something happen, mm-hmm. right? And so I share that because you don't have to experience life the way you're experiencing it. You don't have to feel shame. You don't have to feel confused. You don't have to feel unlovable and broken and unworthy and undeserving. And what got you there into it is not going to get you out of it. So you're probably not going to be able to fix it. I tried for 38 years to fix it through alcohol, through drugs, through rage and anger and all this stuff, and it didn't work. And it turns out a therapist can actually help you. And if we can hire coaches to help us with our speech, like I've got a speech coach, we can hire coaches to help us with our nutrition and our diet and our workouts. I hired a coach to teach me how to run a marathon. Then by God, we can hire a coach to help us deal with this head and this heart. They're only 14 inches apart, but sometimes they're like miles apart. And a great therapist can bring those two things and get them to work together so that you are no longer in that hallway. You can come into the room and begin to experience the human experience. And I think that's a magical thing. And I've been very blessed to be able to work with a great therapist. And I think more people ought to seek one out.
Thank you for supporting the Escape Your Limits podcast. If you're thinking about creating a unique and engaging fitness space to take your fitness to the next level, then we have you covered. Escape Fitness design and manufacture some of the most innovative, attractive, and durable functional training and free weight equipment used by many of the best trainers and fitness brands across the globe. As a valued listener, we are offering you a 10% discount off many of the products on our website. You can check out the full range by going to escapefitness.com and use the code DUMBBELL. That's escapefitness.com using the code DUMBBELL. That's it for me. Please enjoy the rest of this interview. So Bedros, thank you so much for inviting me to your wonderful studio.
Thank you for being here.
I'm very impressed. You obviously do this a lot.
we do this a lot. We get the most use out of this room right here.
You wouldn't think for a fitness company that media would be such an important part of their business model.
In the new age, it is. And this studio has really paid off. It was pretty expensive to build out, but it paid off. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you have a number of different brands that operate out of this office as well, is that
We
right?
do. We have 4 different brands that operate out of this building, and Fit Body Bootcamp, our international franchise, being one of them. Truline, our supplement company that has been ramping up at extraordinary speeds, especially during this time of this pandemic. The Project, which is a men's personal development program, led by a Navy SEAL and a Marine, and of course, my private coaching business as well.
Yeah. So we were talking off camera. A lot of the people who listen to us are from what I would call, I guess, maybe the traditional fitness industry, where you go to the trade shows and you look at the top 10 or fastest growing. And when I sort of looked at you, which you got how many, over 600 locations, is that right?
Yes, and well, rapidly shrinking right now with COVID, but yes.
And I thought, well, why? It was just strange that you guys just don't appear on any of those reports, and yet you're massively successful. One of the sort of bigger fitness chains around the world, I would say, not just in North America. Yeah,
I guess we just fly under the radar. When, as I was telling you before the camera started to roll, I come from the direct response world, direct response marketing instead of kind of brand-based advertising. So we're not looking. Well, I mean, I don't turn down press and media, but I want to spend $1 and make $1 or more back. And so that's the direct response mindset. So we've always kind of invested our money in that direction. So we seem to be growing under the radar, and we're getting the right attention of all the right people. But yeah, we're certainly not hitting any lists that I believe we belong. Because when I see those lists, I'm like, well, we're bigger than them. We're growing faster than them. But no one's mentioning that. But what do you do?
Yeah. But you are in the top 500 fastest growing franchises. You've been there for a while.
Yeah, both on Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine, 3 times in one, twice in the other. So yeah, like I said, all the right places that need to know.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing that probably is worth, I know you cover this a lot on other podcasts, but I think a bit that's worth touching on is that, you weren't born here. This isn't your first language. And it was pretty tough to get to where you were. You didn't have, your parents weren't, well, there you go, there's a check, go and build a big fitness chain. Give us a little bit of a background on kind of how you ended up in America.
Yeah. So, do you know who Mark Divine is?
I don't know.
Okay, so Mark Divine lives in San Diego. He runs a business called SEAL Fit. He's authored 3 or 4 books, great, and he's a former Navy SEAL commander, so definitely high up there. He's retired now from the Navy SEAL program, and he was over at our house for dinner on Saturday, he and his wife, Sandy, and he's like, man, so tell me more about you. Like, you're an immigrant to this country from a communist country. He goes, but that's about all I know. I was like, Mark, I used to think I was just a regular immigrant to this country, and so in 1980, my dad decides that we're going to escape Armenia, which was at the time under Soviet rule. And we, of course, wanted to come to the United States, but since it's communism and the Soviet Union would never allow us to come to the United States, we had to lie and say we're going on a vacation to Italy, because Italy was, sympathetic to communism. And so, of course, we never came back from the vacation to Italy. We went to the American consul once we were in Rome, Italy, and we said, hey, we're political refugees. My dad said, he said, I'm a Communist Party member, and I denounce communism, and I want to enter the United States legally. So we did. And when you enter a country and you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, Matthew, it's a very massive culture shock. It's not like today where I can take me and my family to Japan and I can speak into my phone and Google will translate into Japanese. The way I described it to my son, who's 15, because he was sitting at the dinner table, and I don't normally share a lot of my upbringing experiences with my kids unless they ask. And so they were just sitting at the table and Mark Divine was asking. So I go, son, it would be like if we went to Mars and we don't speak Martian, we don't understand their culture, we don't understand how to fly a flying saucer, and we have to learn that, right? It would be that the equivalent of that when we came to the United States. But the adversity that we dealt with and the setbacks, really the suffering. I mean, there's no other way to say it other than the suffering. There was like the physical, emotional, mental suffering. When you're living in Section 8 housing and you're being beat up and bullied, and I just put up a post today on Instagram, and one of the apartment complexes were so filthy, I got lice, and my parents couldn't afford lice treatment, so my mom asked my dad to siphon out gasoline from a parked car, and she washed my hair with gasoline. Like, that's, and then my dad found a dumpster behind a grocery store, and he realized they throw away food that is still edible, even though it might have a little bit of mold on it or whatever. You can just pick off the mold and eat it. And we were eating that. But to me, that's all I knew. so I just assumed maybe all immigrants go through this. And so as I'm telling all these stories to Mark Devine, his jaw has dropped. And he's like, what the hell? I go, but all this adversity and setback and suffering that we experienced has taught me to be resilient and resourceful. And today, that's my superpower for being able to not only stay in business during this COVID pandemic, but to keep growing my business during this pandemic. And so, you know, the strangest things that you would be grateful for, I am grateful for the worst, suckiest, absolutely most painful childhood ever, because it is a superpower that's allowed me to be resourceful and resilient and relentless in my pursuit of my outcome. Yeah.
I've heard a story when you spoke about when you came here and there was the sort of area where a lot of the Armenian people went to live. And you also heard you give the example as of where you have like Little Italy and Chinatown and that, but your parents sort of purposely decided not to go where anyone else. Tell that story and also explain, you know, how that relates to, I guess, the comfort zone that a lot of us get into, whether it's going into a new company or trying to find a new opportunity. Because I think it was a very interesting observation that you made when you came here.
Yeah, so here in California, like every state has a Little Italy or Chinatown or whatever, right? And so here in California, Little Armenia is in Glendale, California, near Los Angeles. And even in 1980, when we immigrated here, I mean, everyone spoke Armenian, and there's a lot of Armenian stores and Armenian culture. My dad decided that we're going to stay in the Anaheim area where there is zero Armenians. And he said, you're going to learn the language, you're going to assimilate, you're going to lose your accent and become American. And I think it was the most progressive, forward-thinking thing a foreigner can do. Instead of putting his family into what would have otherwise been a very familiar and comfortable environment, Glendale, where there's other Armenians, and then we could kind of learn the culture of the American way, but still interact with Armenians. It was like being thrown in the deep end and saying, son, daughter, learn to swim because you're going to drown. And I think that was a really neat thing to do. And boy, has it certainly forced us out of our comfort zone. I mean, listen, when you're sitting in kindergarten, one of the stories I could tell you, when you're sitting in kindergarten and you're wearing clothes that your mom made you, and you've got a funny bowl haircut, and you know you have to go pee, and you're trying to tell the teacher you have to go pee, but you can't speak, but you know where the restroom is. And so I got up, and it was those little taped off areas, little squares on the ground for kids to sit on. And the teacher was like writing something. So I got up and I started walking towards the bathroom, and she yelled at me. Now I don't know what she said, but I sat back down because I knew it was, hey, get back to your seat. And so I just peed myself, right? Because I got to pee, I'm a kid. And of course, all the other kids begin to laugh at you and bully you. That begins to put you way out of your comfort zone. I'm not saying you should put your kid in that environment. You shouldn't. But I'm grateful that I was inadvertently put into that environment, because it put me so far out of my comfort zone that there's not a thing that you could do to me to frazzle me now, to make me feel uncomfortable. I might do something that I'm unfamiliar with, but I will do it with enthusiasm, and I will ask you to coach me and teach me how to do it right, because I've just been put in so many uncomfortable positions as a byproduct of being an immigrant to a country where my dad decided to leave us in the most American town of all, literally Disneyland. Like Main Street, USA was probably 5 minutes away from the apartments that we lived at. And so it's again, another superpower was gained through that experience. And now, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's a market sophistication, whatever happens, whether it's a new competitor comes out in my industry that's just fully funded by private equity, I just don't get frazzled. And it's a byproduct of constantly having been out of my comfort zone as a child. Now, has that left traumatic marks on me? Absolutely. And have I gone to a therapist to deal with that? Yes, every Monday for 16 months. And Joan here could be my witness to that. But with every adversity, there's a seed of opportunity and growth, as Napoleon Hill says. And I've had the good fortune to deal with a massive amount of adversity early on in my life. Yeah.
Do you think sometimes that is a good thing. And I'll sort of be careful how I say this, but and that in some cases we kind of get a little bit soft in life, and that sometimes it's good to maybe try and create that adversity in some sort of positive way, where you're just not always taking the easy route, where you're pushing yourself to do things that are a little bit uncomfortable. I heard you tell the story about how you went, you got your face smashed in trying to learn MMA, for example. Yeah. So it seems as though you do that yourself.
I do, and I think all of us should. Here's what happens. When you're in a civilized first world country, and if you're listening to this, watching this podcast, you're probably in a first world country or developing country, and even developing countries now, you've got iPhones. You've got more in your hand than they had in the first space shuttle that went to the moon. Like, it's just bananas. That in itself is bananas. And you got to remember how much times have changed in such a short period of time, and since from the 1960s till now, where that's concerned. But again, I saw how valuable adversity was for me. I only saw it 25, 30 years later, how valuable that adversity was, because it's like, why am I so willing to take these risks and do these what seems like crazy things to others? In fact, my mother-in-law, hopefully she won't be watching this, but my mother-in-law once said, as we first got married, I said, I'm starting an online personal training software. And this was in 2003. Like, this is just, the internet is just barely getting started. And she goes, well, you don't know anything about software. You haven't even gone to college. How are you going to create a software program? I'm like, I can hire a software engineer and I can learn to market software, right? And then when I said I'm starting a franchise back in 2010, well, you don't know anything about franchising. You haven't learned franchising from university. I know, but I could search and I could ask and I could learn from others. And so to me, you tell me it, and if I have passion for it, I'll figure it out and I'll be pretty damn good at it. And it's from that adversity. So having learned that in 2010, I found myself, like most people, when they're comfortable, we begin to start seeking easy and comfort, and discomfort is, for lack of a better term, discomfort becomes something that we don't really want to put ourselves into. And so I was like, you know what? I think I need to shake things up in my life. And so I asked my wife, she's a marathon runner, and I said, hey, when is your next marathon? And she goes, in 6 weeks. I go, great, sign me up. And so that was my first of many 6-week challenges that I've done. Now I'm 6 foot, 230 pounds. God has not designed me to run marathons. And that's honestly what I always told myself. It's like, well, you're a big boy. You're designed to lift weights, not run marathons or even a mile. And so she signed me up for the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon. I hired a running coach, trained for 6 weeks, hated every moment of it. It sucked because I would, run my business during the day, be a family man at night, and my kids would go to bed, and my wife and I would watch, we'd watch one TV show a night, one episode of whatever, and then she'd go to bed by 10:30 or so. By 11 o'clock, I'm lacing up my running shoes and running. And, the first week, you're only running a mile or 2 or 3. Not so bad. By week 4 and 5, where you're almost about to do your marathon, I'm running 13, 14, 15, 16 miles a night. So I'm getting home at 2 a.m., right? And I have to wake up at 5 and be the CEO again. And Matthew, I'm going to be very honest with you and tell you that first 6-week training, I would walk out and it'd be cold outside, and this inner conversation would begin, and I would start the negotiation process with myself. It's like, look, your training program says 12 miles. However, if you just run 8, you can make up for it tomorrow, on tomorrow's run. And then the other part of me would say, no. If you do that, you're just a big baby, you're a loser, you're a sucker. And so there was this inner battle, and I would tell myself, okay, just run 1 more mile, and then you can quit. And then 1 more, and then before you know it, I did my 12 miles for the night. And so that training for the marathon, again, taught me how to become more resilient, resourceful, and relentless. Because here's what happens with our entrepreneurial muscles, or with our decision-making muscles, leadership muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it. Like, you're jacked. I see your arms, you're jacked. But if you stop working out in a month, or hell, go catch a cold or a flu or the COVID, you will just atrophy. That's what happens. Your body loses what it doesn't use. And so I had lost my edge. And so I started doing the MMA challenge after that. I started doing jiu-jitsu 6 weeks and then going to a competition. I lived in Southern California. I never surfed, man. I never surfed. And so I said, I'm going to learn how to surf. So I would literally go out 3 days a week for 6 weeks. hired a surf instructor, and when the waves were really big, he would just teach me not to drown. And when there was no waves, I would just learn to paddle. And when the waves were just right, I'd be able to catch a wave. And what's really neat is each one of those challenges that I've done, rock climbing, because I'm afraid of heights, so I said, fuck it, I'm just gonna go and learn how to climb rocks and I love being a white belt in everything. I love showing up as a white belt and saying, hey, coach, teach me. And in 6 weeks, put me up against a challenge. And I got to tell you, that's been an amazing experience for me. I do about 2 challenges a year. And in fact, just last Saturday, 2 weeks ago, I announced to my team upstairs, I said during our group meeting, said, hey, one Saturday from now, as soon as the sun starts going down, I'm going to start walking. I'm going to start walking throughout the city of Chino Hills and Diamond Bar and Chino. These are the 3 cities here in our town. And I'm not going to stop until the sun comes up tomorrow morning, the next day, just because I hadn't trained for it or anything. And I said, if anyone wants to come with me, you're welcome. And I honestly didn't think anyone was going to, just because I felt, it's time that I hurt myself again. It's time, and not hurt like I'm looking for an injury, hurt like I need to suffer. I need to push myself against that glass ceiling where I begin to negotiate with my inner bitch, where I begin to want to back off. And you can just tell when you've gotten too soft again. And so Saturday came and 5 of my teammates, decided to do it with me. And so I said, we're going to meet here at this one park. And at 4:47, as the sun started to dip down, off we went. And we covered 31 miles in 13 hours last Saturday. It was painful, blisters under everyone's feet, hamstrings were locked up, hips. My left knee was swollen because I've had 2 reconstruction surgeries here. And you're sleep deprived because you haven't slept. It's going on 24 hours at that point. It's cold, and the cold is just nipping at your face. And Chino Hills has a lot of hills. And man, was the pain who doesn't have pain and suffering? Dead people. Yeah. Dead people do not feel anything. And I don't want to be dead. No. And there's so many living dead people right now who just wade through life in comfort. They're bubble wrapped. They choose easy over hard, and they feel nothing. I want to feel the suffering and the adversity and then be grateful for it and then use what I learned. Because at any given time, I could have said, guys, let's stop. We've gone 20 miles, that's good enough. Or we've done 26 miles, we've done a marathon, we can stop. But I'm like, well, we're going until the sun comes up. And I could see some of my team members were looking at me like, hey, you're the oldest one in the group here, and are we ever going to stop? No, not until the sun comes up. We may slow down, but you're not going to stop. And it was just a magical moment, yeah.
Do you think you do? I was thinking about it before I came here because I'd read a bunch of stuff and read your book, and you obviously use sort of pain and anger, or you talk about it quite a bit, and you've used it to drive you. Do you think sometimes, and I know it experiences me, sometimes like just going into an ice bath or just doing something difficult, as painful as it is, sometimes if you've had a tough time or if you're going through something tough, it almost kind of allows you to experience something that's more painful to sort of allow you to deal with that pain. Do you ever find that is kind of almost like a therapy that you need for something else that's going on, those challenges?
Yeah. I'll give you a great example of that. So COVID started mid-March, right, of 2020, the year that we're in. And I was like, oh man, what else can go wrong? Because this was something that, I've always assumed that, well, maybe we're going to have a, God forbid, another terrorist attack and the economy is going to get screwed. Or maybe Wall Street's going to crash, or maybe another housing market crash. And so I've always been prepared for, as Tony Robbins calls it, winter, for winter to come. But man, I would have never bet that it would be in the form of a flu virus. And so it came. And shut down businesses. And I, as the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, had to announce to all of our franchisees throughout Canada and the United States, guys, we have a social responsibility. Because at the time, we really felt it was a very horrific virus. Guys, let's shut down, do the right thing, pivot to online coaching, and we'll figure it out from there, right? And I remember thinking to myself, man, this is bananas. How long is it going to last? Maybe 2-3 months at best. And of course, as March, April, May, it's like, okay, this is really lasting. I was like, this is bad. This is very bad. And then guess what happens in June? A guy dies at one of my events. All of a sudden, that made COVID look really small, very manageable.
Well, he died from COVID or just...
No, he died from going through the project, one of the 75-hour men's development experience. It's very physically demanding. He didn't die from the project, but he died at the project. And, you know, the reality is he may have died while going on a hard run at home, right? But it happened there. And here you are experiencing COVID, and then comes June, and you're like, what else can go wrong? And bam, somebody dies. All of a sudden you realize, this COVID's not so bad. I wish I could just go back one day, right? Right, and so I share that, and so you nailed it, yeah. It is very important that if you're having a hard day, to get the perspective, ask yourself, how much harder would this be if I was blind? How much harder would this be if I was an amputee? And what else could I do to show myself a really hard day so that I can put this hard day to perspective? And once you put things into perspective, you realize this really wasn't so hard. It's just so far been the hardest thing, but there's far harder things, like someone could die during your COVID pandemic. And so now I walk around telling everybody, do not ask what's next, because we just might have another thing. You know, instead, we're just grateful that we have this day, and we know that it's not a bad virus. And I've instructed my franchisees to open up and run your businesses. And if you feel that this is a bad virus and it might be damaging to you or your clients, then don't open up. But at the end of the day, yeah, when you put yourself through some kind of hardship or experience, whether it's an ice bath or walking through the middle of the night until the sun comes up the next morning for 13 hours, then you realize, okay, all right, the pain I'm feeling, I was so sore for 3 days that I haven't slept, like, holy cow. Not sleeping from COVID, I still got sleep. Because not sleeping from the pain, it was like 3 days afterwards, I still couldn't sleep because I was in so much pain. And I realized, actually, I was getting good sleep and I just didn't realize it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So what's leadership been like through COVID, this COVID period for you personally? And I guess, what have you learned a year on from this time last year as a leader? Dude,
leadership. So we all try and get better at leadership, right? Because as leaders, we want to be able to communicate, we want to be able to problem solve, we want to be able to delegate to our team, we want to inspire and give hope to our team. But when this happens, this level of pandemic or catastrophe happens in the world, it really tests your leadership muscles. It's almost like someone who's really good at squatting in the gym and does it to have big quads and hamstrings and great definition on the VM and VLs, et cetera. Now you're like, all right, man, we're gonna take you to a powerlifting meet. And he's like, oh, but I only lift for show, not for go. You know, like, you want me to lift that kind of weight? It's like, well, your legs look big enough to squat that. Like, yeah, but you know, it's a very different, right? You work out, you know, it's a very different style of training. And so for many leaders, I think they realized that when the economy's good and business is thriving, you think you're a great leader. When a catastrophe like this happens, you realize, holy crap, I really need to start flexing my leadership muscles. And that begins to put you into the acid test. Like, am I really good? So for me, do you know what L10 meetings are?
No.
So there's something called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's from a book called Traction. Highly recommend the book to any entrepreneur watching, listening to this. The author's name is Gino Wickman, Traction, Gino Wickman. And Gino Wickman created a system called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And the EOS system really helps you run your business. It's a system to run your business. And that's how we scaled our supplement company 10 times faster than we've scaled our fitness franchise, Fit Body Bootcamp. And so we have an EOS meeting, they call it L10, level 10 meeting once a week, every Tuesday. Soon as the pandemic started, we were having an L10 meeting twice a day. And I was going live in our private Facebook group with our franchise owners every day. So we would have a 9 a.m. L10 meeting. By 12 noon, I was going live to my franchisees, explaining to them the state of the nation as it pertained to us. And then at 4 o'clock, because there's so much information would come in from the news, from our franchisees in different states and all the different mayors and governors making different rules. Then at 4 o'clock, we had a whole new L10 in the afternoon. Then we'd go home and exercise profusely just to get the stress out. My wife and family and I. And then we come back the next morning. And so, you know, I felt I was a great leader, but this pandemic made me an even better leader. And I really believe that anyone who stuck it out during this pandemic has gained at least a decade of personal growth and personal development and leadership expertise. In 1 year, you've gained 10 years of experience. Like, you cannot, I mean, there's a lot of great things happening right now. Sure, most of it is, gets reported as, the number of businesses being shut down. I think there's like 16 businesses per hour being shut down right now. But people are stepping into leadership. New ways of business development is being produced, opportunities, expansions. And for me, leadership, I got to really test my leadership muscles and realized how good of a leader I was and how much better I could have gotten, and I did. And so I'm really grateful, not so much for the times, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. I've got another friend who's a Navy SEAL. His name is Jason Redman. He goes, Bedros, when you become a Navy SEAL, at some point, you're kind of hoping and praying for a war. And he goes, I hate to say that, but you're hoping and praying for a war. I'm like, Jason, why? He goes, well, all the Navy SEALs in the 90s, those were called the dry years, apparently. There's no war. So they're training to kill and maim and infiltrate and set booby traps and blow up ships. But there's nothing to do. So they were constantly in practice. He goes, at some point, we want to go and slap the dragon. Those were his words. We want to slap the dragon and see if we really have what it takes. And he goes, so when this war broke off, this 9/11 kicked off this war, he goes, that was an opportunity for all these SEALs to go and slap the dragon and see if we really have what it takes. And he goes, there was plenty of SEALs after their first deployment decided this wasn't for me. I'm done. I could shoot a paper target. I could even stab a pig to death, but I'm not willing to do this to a human, or I just can't, right? And so this was our version of it for entrepreneurs. This COVID was our version of it to flex our leadership muscles, to slap the dragon and see if we really know how to lead in chaos. Yeah.
Was there anything or things that you, in parallel of learning through the experience itself, were you almost like going back into the gym as such to develop any other leadership things? And if so, what were you doing? Or were you just so caught up in, like, I just need to do now, and now's not the time to be learning?
Well, I learned very quickly that as a leader, so how about this? I wasn't intentionally going, oh my gosh, here's another thing I just need to learn. Like I didn't, we're moving so fast, you're not discovering the chinks in the chain until looking back. But one thing I realized was one day during those lives that I do with my franchisees every day in between our 2 L10 meetings, I just started off with a rant. And I started off with a rant of saying, look, we're going to be like cockroaches and we're not going to die. We're going to be like a weed and we're going to be resilient. We're just not going to die. Fit Body Bootcamp will exist, some form of it, past this pandemic, even if we're just strictly an online business, because all of our leases were just done and expired and gone, right? And I was just ranting before I went through my bullet points of things I was going to share with them from the L10 meeting that we had. By doing that, I got so many messages back that afternoon from our franchisees saying, you gave me so much hope. And I realized as a leader, before we can give them vision and direction, we have to first give them hope. Hope first. And after that, every live that I did started off with a message of hope. And then here's what we're going to do to live another day, survive another day. And I realized that again, because leadership for me is not factory installed. It's not a factory installed gift. Jocko Willink, like there's a factory installed leader. Me, not so much. And so I had to develop that. So I still have to learn the nuances of leadership. And one of them was, look, when your team is just beat up and they feel uncertain and they don't know if they could stay open another day, me giving them a marketing strategy and talking about the new marketing strategy that's coming down the pipe isn't going to excite them. Like, I'm dying. Just leave me alone. Let me die peacefully. But me giving them hope and getting them to want to sit up and listen and lean in and listen, now I can give them the marketing strategy and they may actually use it. And that was one of the biggest things I learned during this time. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's something that you naturally have to give yourself hope, or if not, how did you get that certainty? Because I guess we were all there in April when suddenly we found out what happened and our income streams dried up. You know, we were there, and many of your franchisees were. Where did you get that hope and certainty that somehow you was going to get through it, or are you just naturally optimistic?
And this goes back to what you talked about earlier when you said when you read my book. I have a lot of rage and anger in me, man. I have a lot of rage and anger. And so I was just like, you know what? If this thing's going to fail, it's going to fail because I chose to give up and not because some governor or mayor or politician is trying to use this thing as an agenda to pass their ideology forward. Like, they're not going to crush my brand because of this. And I just got pissed off. And people go, and I talk about this often. I'm like, look, sometimes I just want to grow my empires just to get revenge of all the people that told me you're a foreigner, you're an immigrant, you're dyslexic, I have OCD and ADD, and you're never going to make it. And they're like, well, but you should want to grow more. You should be enthusiastic and positive and optimistic. It's okay to be pissed off and want to grow just for revenge. Mm-hmm. Like, anger, whether you believe in God or the universe or whoever, Mother Nature, those emotions and feelings that you have in you are there because they're tools on a tool belt. Sometimes, like that mom who gets in a car accident with the kid in the back seat, the car is turned over, she gets, even though she's bloody, she'll get so angry and disturbed, she will find a way to lift that car up just enough to rescue her child. Mm-hmm. Are we going to say that you should have wanted to rescue that child out of love and hope? Mm-hmm. No, right now you're using anger as the stimulus, and that's okay. That is very okay. And so I found that I have a lot of darkness and anger and rage within me because of all the things that happened to me as a kid growing up. Even in Armenia, I was molested by 2 older boys. And when you're a young kid molested by 2 older boys over a long period of time, that leaves a lot of scars on you, man. And I can share that openly now after 16 months of therapy. But let me tell you, if I want to use anger to grow my organizations and use my inner rage and the fire in my belly and the chip on my shoulder, then so be it, because I'm going to use the money from my companies to donate to Shriners and Toys for Tots and Compassion International. And if I do good with my business, even though it was done out of anger and rage and to show someone that, doggone it, you can't call me a failure, good for me. And so I just locked on to my anger and rage, and I was like, we're going to make it through this somehow. I don't know how, but we're going to make it through this because no politician is going to put me out of business.
Have you had to work on that? Like, from an anger perspective, I've had it, I still get it, and I'm older now, and I guess I've learned to control it. And I didn't have the background you, but it's there in me. And sometimes it can get you into trouble because you don't want somebody telling you what to do. Have you had to kind of learn about how to kind of use it in the right way? And
yes.
Have you gone off the rails where it has actually got you in trouble and you thought, what am I doing? What's the time?
Well, when I was younger, I got off the rails a lot. In my early 20s, as I look back, I just had such a chip on my shoulder, and I was such an angry young man. I was carjacking, other people, stealing their cars, mainly Honda Civics and Honda Accords, and then.
Why is that? Because they're easy to break in.
No. When you carjack someone, you actually go to them at a stoplight, and you need to be in front of them at a stoplight. As soon as the light turns red, you back up so that they can't get out. So they're pinned between your car and the car behind them, and you quickly get out and you get them out of their car. Right. Your friend drives off with your car, you drive off with their car, and then a Honda Accord and a Honda Civic. No one should do this, by the way. Watching or listening to this, don't do this. Do not use that strategy. People will stab you or shoot you, or karma will get you. Karma got me. And so we would take the car and we'd strip it down, and you can literally get like 10x the value of the car by selling the parts. And so that's what we did as young men. And while it was fun, and we chalked it up as this is a fun, easy way to make money, it was just out of rage and anger, and I just was willing to destroy things. And in fact, I ended up getting in a police helicopter chase one time when the carjacking led to home invasion robberies. But Tim Grover wrote an amazing book called Relentless. Mm-hmm. Tim Grover is Michael Jordan's trainer and Kobe Bryant's and so many other great basketball players. And in his books, he talks about, I think he was telling Dwayne Wade, he said, Dwayne, if you can just take your rage and your anger, you bring it to the court, but if you can just control that, controlled rage for 48 minutes on the court, you will dominate. Because his rage, when it was out of control, he would start fouling and yelling at refs and getting into fist fights, and then they put him on the bench, right? And so as a trainer, you would think he's supposed to train him on his muscles and his physics or his physiology, but he ended up working on the guys here, on his mindset. And Dwayne was able to bring that rage in a controlled state to the court and became a dominant force. And so over time, I've learned that I can use this rage for good. And, throughout my 30s and now 40s, I'm 46 years old. It's rage under control, and I use it for good. That's the best way I can describe it. And in fact, as my therapist and I were talking about it, his name is Kevin, and he goes, hey, so do you want to address this rage that you talk about often? I'm like, no, we're not going to fix that. I don't want you to help me fix that. Like, I'll feel neutered if you do, because I've learned to control it. And after reading Relentless, Grover's book, I was like, I've got my rage under control because I no longer want to be an asshole in life. And because I understand what karmic justice is. And I had acquired such massive karmic debt, Matthew, that, one time I literally carjacked a guy, and within 4 hours, him and a group of 13 other dudes beat the dog shit out of me with golf clubs. Like, that is karma, and it's like almost instant karmic justice. And I realized what was going on. So anyway, so for me, it's just been rage under control, as Grover says, is a gift. And to me, I utilize that gift.
So how did you, the word pivot is used a lot, and I guess a lot of people in our industry have had to find different ways to keep their businesses going. What were some of the strategies that you guys have adopted to keep the lights on and to prevent people just going out of business?
So we, I guess, pivoted. And what is pivot? It's really creativity under chaos, right? It's like, Oh my God, it's chaos. The pivot is someone shooting a gun at you. Go find some cover to get behind. You just pivoted, right, on the battlefield. And so the same thing applies in business. It's creativity under chaos. And so we realized when Trump said, and I'm a Trump supporter, when Trump said, like, hey, we'll be back in business by Easter, which was like April 12th or something. Now, coming from a communist country, my dad's taught me one thing: never trust the government. And so as much as I'm a Trump supporter, I'm like, he's wrong. That's not what's going to happen, because we heard this thing lasted so long in China. There's no way we're going to be able to get around it in a couple weeks. It's not going to be a 2-week lockdown. So when he said there's a 2-week lockdown, I'm like, let's assume it's a 2-year lockdown. Let's assume every Fit Body Boot Camp is burnt to the ground. And in 72 hours, we filmed 36 done-for-you full workouts, 30-minute workouts, partnered up with Zoom, started private Facebook groups for every Fit Body Bootcamp location, and pivoted to online coaching within 72 hours. And then from there, it was, hey, here's 30 done-for-you workouts. From there, do your own live workouts, because people want the live coaching. Do it on Zoom, interact with your clients, and create that community feel on their Facebook, right, by doing Facebook Lives 3 times a day. Because we're tribal, we still need that community experience. And in the meantime, when locations do get open, now I didn't know it was going to reopen in June and then close again. Like, that was a punch to the gut. And full disclosure, during those 3 weeks when we opened, like, everybody was so excited. And as soon as 3 weeks went by in June and we closed, that's when we had our first big kind of mass exodus of Fit Body owners, right? Because and it's sad, man. I can have all the hope in the world, but at the end of the day, if you've got no more fight in you, you're just going to leave. And so you could just imagine these Fit Body franchise owners saying, man, what a kick to the gut. For 3 weeks I was open, and now I've got to shut down again. That's it. I'm throwing in the towel. And as hard as we tried, we just couldn't. And that's when we realized, like, all right, this is going to be a long-term battle. Like, this is not a short sprint. We're in it for the marathon. And so then we partnered with Trainer Eyes is another thing we did. They custom built out a platform for us. And another way we pivoted was we introduced the TrueLean supplement line more aggressively to our Fit Body Bootcamp clients, and our franchisees now became affiliates of it. And average Fit Body Bootcamp owner who's promoting the TrueLean supplement line that we have is making between $5,000 and $7,000 a month in additional revenue selling supplements, not only to their clients, but to people who will never become their clients, to their community.
So what they like, just they've got their own websites where they're buying from you and then like reselling it out.
Yeah,
right?
And then we went to, and we, of course, you realize they don't now have the cash, or they don't have the confidence in putting the cash out to buy the supplements and resell. And so we went to an affiliate program where here's an affiliate code, send out an email. We'll write the emails for you. We even started doing that. We'll write the emails for you. You insert your link, send out the email. When they buy it from our website, we drop ship it to their house. You get the commission. And that's worked out well. And so look at all these new businesses or business strategies we created during this crazy time. But those were several of the pivots that we had to do just to stay afloat, And then when you think about some places like Texas, Florida, Alabama, they're open for business now, full capacity. And then other states, we have taped off 8x8 squares on the ground, and we do what we call the train in place modality. And there's no more rotating. Fit Body Bootcamp is about the 4-station rotation.
Right.
We have 4 stations, and you rotate within 30 minutes, and you have an awesome total body workout. And so we've had to create this train in place modality and reteach our coaches how to train using that model so that you can still give them a fully effective workout with just 2 pieces of equipment in their little square.
Right. So how many clients do you train at a time then? Is it small group training?
It's now come down to as little as 8, as much as 12 at a time. Just to give you an idea, some of our locations we're doing 30 to 70 people at a time.
Gee.
So if we didn't have the online coaching, if we didn't have the TrueLean supplement revenue, like these franchise locations would just be upside down.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And how do you see your business now with, COVID's obviously not going to go anywhere. Have you sort of totally evolved like what that franchise is going to be, or is this a sort of a temporary strategy and you're going to kind of, sort of go back to probably how you were before?
We have to go back to how we were before.
Really?
We have to. Not even for the sake of my business, for the sake of our country.
Right.
We have to go back to how we were before. And Matthew, when I see people out there wearing designer face masks, cheetah print or diamonds, I want to just go and tear it off their face. Not for any other reason other than do not call this the new norm. Do not accept this as a new standard. Like, we are not designed to breathe in our own CO2. We're not designed to be muzzled. There's so many psychological problems of this. And coming from a communist country, I see the play of control and compliance that the government is trying to utilize. Hitler said it best. You never take away all their rights. The strategy is slow erosion of one little right after another until they don't realize how far they let go. And then you give them a little bit back. So you take away 90%, but you give them 10% back, and they feel okay about it. And so it's a game out of Stalin's book. It's a game out of Hitler's book, the plan as far as what's happening, in my opinion. And so Fit Body Bootcamp, this will not be our norm. We will go back to normal. Every restaurant, every hair salon, every real estate agent, every doctor, every person on this planet needs to go back to normal. We are citizens of the planet, and we deserve to roam the planet. I want to go travel with my family again. I don't want to be tracked with an app. I don't want to be traced. Anyway, I can go down a rabbit hole and I won't.
So with that then, I know certain, in certain parts of the world, and even here in certain states, a lot of the fitness operators are coming together and they're actually going to the local governments and mayors and trying to sort of show them that these fitness facilities are safe, and they're probably a lot safer than going into a Whole Foods or wherever. Is there anything that you guys have had to do, or are you just sort of waiting it out until people allow you to open as normal?
Well, I guess we're waiting it out simply because we've got franchisees who we are backing up as they're fighting a fight on many different fronts. The fight in Michigan is a very different fight than the fight in California here.
Really?
Right? And the fight in California is very different than the fight in Nevada. And so we have to keep, there's small little battles that we're fighting across all these different states, even counties. LA County is very different, as you know, living, right, than Orange County, where you live, and where we are here in Chino Hills. And so sadly, we can't collectively go and say, here's what we're going to do as an industry. And so I think the number one strategy to going back to normal is to start disobeying these cockamamie mandates that are not backed by science. And when enough people begin to disobey, then we'll have no choice but to go back to normal. Simple as that. Everyone's talking about defunding the police. I think it might be time to start defunding the government. And how great would it be if everybody stopped paying their income taxes just for 1 year, and watch how quickly the world will go back to normal.
Yeah. It's an interesting, it's an interesting debate, because I guess you'll have some people that, I don't know what the demographic is of the people who go into your facilities, but do you have older people that are genuinely concerned about their health and concerned about COVID?
Absolutely. And we had those people during the SARS epidemic. We had those people every year during the flu epidemic, and we encourage them to stay home, and we give them workouts that they can do at home. But when you've got a 99.6% survivability rate of the people that are infected by the virus, when you're starting to identify essential versus non-essential, like, how can you say that? To him, his job is essential. And to him and to her, their jobs are essential. To you, what you do is essential. To my family, what I do is essential. How can it not be? Why should my 13-year-old daughter, 15-year-old son wonder if we're going to be living in a home, or if we have to move into an apartment, or if we have to move in with grandma and grandpa, like some of their friends' parents did because they were non-essential? Work is essential to someone. And how can we have a mayor or a governor or a leader define what essential is and what essential isn't? Especially, the irony is we've got a Fit Body Boot Camp, I forget what state it is, a Fit Body Boot Camp that's across the street from a strip club. The Fit Body Boot Camp is asked to keep their doors closed, while the strip club is seen as essential.
Really?
Yes.
How's that work?
No. They can stay open. They're not serving food, so they're not a restaurant.
Right.
Yeah. So can you figure that out? Because I can't either, Matthew.
Depends who owns it, but no, I can't.
Right, exactly. And then when you see the hypocrisy of the Austin mayor says, hey guys, don't travel, stay at home, and then he flies to Cancun with his family and vacations without a mask. And then you see the governor of California, Newsom, going into the French Laundry, which is a fantastic restaurant. I've been there twice, I love it. But you asshole, how dare you go into the restaurant and eat inside without a mask and then condemn others for having their business open? Like, that's like, if there's a horrible death to come to someone, it should come to him in the worst way possible. And so, yes, old people should stay at home. If you are immune deficient, you should stay at home. The rest of us, let's do the work and keep this country great.
Yeah, it is. Like, I've been into a bunch of stores. We got a Christmas tree just the other weekend, and you kind of see how crazy it is, people fighting over, getting stuff out, because I guess there's a shortage of things. And you think, well, how is that safe? And yet in the fitness facilities, and certainly the ones I've been in, everything's tested, everything's cleaned. And I think it's always been an industry where people have always, even people who are working out, clean themselves, clean their benches. And
it's always been that way. Like, restaurants have a health department to deal with. Like, that standard has been there for restaurants. Gyms have literally cleaning stuff on the wall for people to clean themselves after, and they usually have staff that cleans. Like, the standards have always been there. So the fact that we're having to go the extra mile to create this cleaning experience in a form of optics just to make people feel safe, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's the emperor without his clothes, And it's a weird thing. Like, 2 days ago, my wife said, hey, there's something at the Walgreens that you need to go pick up. FedEx dropped it off over there. It's like a FedEx drop-off point. So I went to Walgreens after my workout to go pick it up. Now, this particular Walgreens, their cash registers are in a line, a horizontal. And so obviously in an attempt to keep the employees behind the counter 6 feet apart, there's 4 cash registers, but obviously they're like 2.5 feet apart. So they had 2 cash registers open, one on either end, and the 2 in the middle were shut. Because of that, I counted and I took a picture. There's a 32-person line. And even though they have the cute little X's on the ground, humans are humans and they just close distance, right? Nobody was 6 feet apart. So there's 32 of us violating all levels of social distancing, while the 2 people behind the counter were certainly 6 feet apart. And because there was only 2 of them, and 32 of us. It took me 40 minutes to get out of that line. How's that okay?
That's probably where a lot of damage is caused with the 32 people that are there.
Right. It just, there's nothing makes sense, man.
No.
There's nothing that makes sense anymore, but that's the times that we live in.
So what about online? Like you've built, I guess within the fitness space and running a large franchise, you've built a very big online presence and brand, which is not easy to do. And I know you see a lot of businesses now starting that process to be able to deliver some sort of digital product. As someone who's been in that for quite a long time, what's your views? Is that a viable alternative for clubs that can't open? Is it profitable? Can they make money, or is it better just to kind of get through things until you can start making revenue in a normal way?
For most clubs, I say do the best you can to get through things the best you can.
Right.
Like instead of trying to pivot your whole thing online, because remember, the moment you go online, you're also competing with everybody in the world. And there's professional online coaches who are assassins at marketing because I've coached them. Vince Del Monte comes to mind, Devin Physique comes to mind, Rachel Shear comes to mind. These are people that I've coached and we've taught them such amazing internet marketing strategies and social media building strategies. Because when you're marketing locally, you're only competing against all the other gyms in your town, right? The moment you decide I'm going to go online and the human psyche says, and now I'll have more people to market to. Now you just went from playing pee-wee soccer to playing like at the highest level of FIFA, right? And there's no way you're going to be able to compete. And so that's what I see happening out there right now with businesses. And I think they're better off just trying to stay under the radar, keep running your business the best you can until this whole thing blows over, and it will. And it will. This is a very resilient country. People forget how young this country is and how just it was a short while ago that the United States was founded on a constitution based upon freedom. And so we are so hungry for freedom again, and you see that happening now. We will go back to normal. And so if you've got the staying power, you're better off staying, because as soon as you try and go to online, it's going to be chaotic for most businesses. Most aren't. The reality, and I don't want to be a pessimist, the reality is most are going to fail online. No point in doing it.
What are some of you are a great marketeer, and I was checking out your website, and you've got some extremely successful people that also say you're a great marketeer at selling a lot of high ticket items. What are some of the things that in this time when people are trying to up their marketing and they can only I guess rely on a lot of the digital stuff. What are some of the things that you've been coaching people that they can focus on to sort of at least expand their reach from what they're probably doing at the moment?
Yeah. So, and by the way, when I say businesses, gyms shouldn't go on. Hey, go online, but still market in your local community. That way, you're still online, but you're marketing in your local community, and odds are, the people in your community know of you. Maybe you're too far for them to go into your gym, but at least you're not far enough where they don't know of you. They know of you, they know you're a local business, and you're currently shut down, and you're running an online version of it. But the moment you try and compete against everyone in the world, you're just going to get destroyed. It's like taking the family's SUV, because it's a big boxy car, taking it to battle. It's not a Humvee made for the war. It's still a big car, but it's not made for the war. And going on the internet, like that's the big boys league. But some of the things that I've been teaching, and I think any business can do that no matter how small or how big, more than ever, start differentiating yourself. Like, how specific can you be? If the project, for example, I'll give you an example. The project is for men over the age of 35 who are entrepreneurs, married with kids. Like, those are the only people we're looking for. Like, that is very specific. If we get some 20-year-olds who sign up for it, great, fantastic. But the ones we're marketing for, the ones we developed the website for, the testimonials that you see on the site, is all for that very specific individual, because I know what his fears, frustrations, and desires are, because I've been there. I'm that guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And because of that, it's like bullseye when we market. And so, I've got clients who are like, well, I'm a great coach. I'm a great trainer. I'm like, fantastic. Pick a body part, pick a gender, pick a demographic. And so I've got the clients of mine who are just doing pre-contest competition diets are killing it. The ones that are just working with women who want to get a beautiful bum, Did I say that right? Bum,
Yeah.
right? Are doing it. If you're like, I'm going to be a fitness coach, a male and female, age 9 to 90, that's not going to work. You have to have specificity, differentiate yourself. How are you different than everybody else? And then you have to kill them with social proof. You have to back it up with testimonials. Those are the 3 things you need to do is testimonials. You can go to, because I can say how awesome I am as a marketer all day long and as a business coach. But when you go to my website and you see, you got Lewis House and you got all these different celebrities and thought leaders, Navy SEALs, NFL winning, Super Bowl winning champions telling me like Bedros coached me and now I'm able to make 7 figures. You have no choice but to believe them because I'm going to say how awesome I am all day long and you're going to do the same about yourself, but when others talk about you. And so for so long, people have failed to get testimonials and social proof because, well, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to ask my clients for that. You have an obligation and a duty. If I help you create an outcome that you want, I can now ask you and say, hey, Matthew, now that I help you get those amazing jacked arms, can I count on you to give me a testimonial? And just in the videos, talk about how awesome it was, the experience, and how easy it was, and how you feel. Do you recommend others work with me? Now imagine if I have 40 testimonials from other guys just like you. And I go, I'm the guy that helps other guys build jacked arms.
Do you think that's because people are like a bit scared that if they niche down too much, that there's not enough? But, they need to say, well, we look after everybody so that they can feel as though they're getting a bigger net.
That's exactly it. That's exactly, which is so counterintuitive because on the internet, like you can find, if you just go, I help 40-year-old men, it's 40-year-old, not 41, not 39, 40-year-old men. You could find 40-year-old men and it'll be millions of them in the United States. And now you can go, hey man, now that you're 40, you're entering a new generation, a new decade in your life. Life in your 40s are far different than your 30s. And here's what you can expect. And they go, holy crap, it's like you're talking to me, right? Yeah, you're right, I am 40. I'm not 41, I'm not 39, I'm 40. That's a very specific guy. And so, but I think it sounds so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Well, if I can do everything for everyone, and I'm sure you can, because at the end of the day, our metabolisms are all the same. We all have 2 arms and 2 legs and whatever, but you gotta go specific. That's the only way to succeed.
So you've got up against some real big brands and to become one yourself. And you talk a lot about vision and clarity of vision. Does that relate to your marketing conversation? And are those some of the things that you did when you set out with your Fit Body Bootcamp? Is that sort of specificity about like exactly who you're going after?
It is. We had to, in fact, we got on the Inc. 5000 list, Entrepreneur 500 fastest growing franchise list, as soon as I set the vision that we're going to have 2,500 locations by the year 2025. And that means we need to get 31 EOIs in a day. EOI is an expression of interest form, as in someone who's interested in starting a fit body. Like when I got that specific and I said, here's our vision, here's the daily mission, and then here's our core values that we're going to live by, and we will only hire and fire based on the core values. And we only have 3 very simple core values: drive change, exceed expectations, and be relentlessly disciplined, period. We used to have 10, but those weren't core values. Those were more aspirational goals. It's just we're relentlessly disciplined, we drive change, and we exceed expectations. And we have the vision of what we want and when we want it by. We have the daily mission on what everybody has to do each day to achieve the outcome. And then finally, we have the good old core values that we live by. And if you come in here and you're like, hey, Bedros, I just don't have that intensity and that rage in my eyes, cool. McDonald's is hiring, so someone else is hiring, but not me. And when we accidentally bring on board someone like that, we end up parting ways with them, or they end up quitting. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a guy that started with us, and he slipped through the cracks with us. He shouldn't have. I was the final interview, and he just interviewed well. 8 days later, he went to HR, and he goes, I can't work here. I can't work here. Good. Yeah. Good. I should have been better, as well as the 2 other people who interviewed him before me, to have vetted him through. Yeah.
When you do those visions, and this time last year, you're rethinking about your vision, and something like COVID comes in the way, what do you do about adjusting, correcting? Because you got your vision, your mission, etc., and your core values. Do you relook at those and say, well, is this still relevant? Or are you putting together a vision that's going to be relevant in terms of philosophy, but maybe slightly different from a product perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So again, going back to our Navy SEAL friends, because the business world and the battlefield are not much different. They bleed blood, we bleed money. It's equally as devastating because ultimately we will all die. Plenty of entrepreneurs have gone and killed themselves because they just can't face the debt that they've put themselves and their families in. And that's the dark truth about the entrepreneurial world. And if they're not killing themselves, they're, infidelity, drug use, alcohol, you name the vice, and they've dove into it. But going back away from that for just a moment. Again, Jason Redmond, my Navy SEAL friend, said, hey, we have something called the speed wheel. When we're about to go on a mission, whether it's a kill, capture, or just get information, the speed wheel, we use the speed wheel and we go, all right, it's this far away and we have to take this much stuff with us. If everything goes well, it should take us 4 hours to get on target. If we have to face some enemy combatants, it might take us 6 hours. And if we really have to go around a long way, it might take us 8 hours. So they have the good, better, and best options. But no matter what, the mission gets done. And so, of course, we have to go and, all right, COVID just happened. We lost a couple hundred locations. What do we do about the vision? So maybe we go, all right, it's still 2,500. The number doesn't change. We want 2,500 locations, but maybe it won't be by 2025. Maybe it'll be by 2027. And based on what marketing assets we have, maybe it won't be 31 EOIs a day. Maybe it'll have to be 41, 51, 61 applications a day. But it must change based on what's going on. The outcome will still be the same. You'll still achieve the outcome, but how much longer and what kind of effort goes into it, those two factors will always change. And they have to. And they have to. In fact, if Facebook went away, which it's one of our most, I'd say it's probably about 70% of our leads for Fit Body Bootcamp right now come from Facebook. So it's a large sum of our leads. If Facebook just went away tomorrow, we would probably have to restructure our vision, even if COVID went away, simply because that provides us 70% of our leads. By the time we find another source of leads that can compete with that, it would easily take a year. I know for a fact. And so if we're going to lose a year, I'm going to have to make it up on the back end somehow. Or find a platform that gives me double the results and I have to spend double the money to time collapse and still meet, right? But at the end of the day, still something has to change, either effort or duration. Yeah.
Culture, you've, from what I understand, you've built a great culture prior to this within your business, and everybody's aligned up. And my guess is that's a lot to do with the clear vision that you've got and your expectations of people. I know I've spoke to a lot of other operators that have hundreds of trainers like yourself that have been delivering workouts, and these people in a lot of cases are not in work. How have you been able to sort of try and maintain some sense of culture with the people that can no longer run classes or anything like that anymore, sessions?
It's been difficult. That's the reality. And so I'm always very transparent and open and honest about it. So one, it's been difficult, but two, we did it right from probably about 2014, we started doing it right. And we only brought on people that aligned with our core values. Very intense people, very driven people. And look, when you're in the public eye, and people go, man, Bedros, I really like you, so I'm going to start a Fit Body Bootcamp because I resonate with you. You might like me, but you don't know the intensity that I bring. Like these guys in here do. There's plenty of, and Joan will be the first to tell you, I've made her cry plenty of times. And so you might like me on social media because, man, he really inspires and motivates me. But I can be pretty intense in person, right? And so we want some really hard people working with us, whether they're team members here at HQ or they're franchisees coming on board. You can't just read my book and inspired by it and go, hey, I want to become a franchisee. We will vet you out and you won't be a franchisee because when times like this come, you'll be the first one to want to give up, And so we did right by bringing the right people on board, both franchisees and team members, number one. Number two, I'm just fully honest and transparent about what's happening. And if I have to go do a Facebook Live and go, guys, I just feel a little dark and depressed and hopeless today. And that's because I'm worried for our country, not for our brand, because no one's going to make us fail. But, we might end up running Fit Body Bootcamp in a socialist environment. And having come from that scares me. That scares me. My dad is still alive. He's 86 years old. And he's like, what is going on? I brought you guys here to freedom and to democracy. And it's like quickly going into socialism and communism. And so But those two things together, bring the right people on board, coach them up. We've spent so much time, energy, effort, money in pouring into our people. Whether it's here's the books to read, or here's the events to go to, and here's the experiences to have. All right, you're not going to go there. We're going to bring Jocko Willink and his team to come and speak to us. You name the thought leader, the expert who's going to help us level up just by one more degree. I'm not looking for someone who's going to give us 20% increase. Like, that doesn't exist. What I'm looking for is like the margins of improvements that I can get, because I know at 211 degrees, water boils. At 212 degrees, just one more degree, water becomes steam, and it can power a nuclear power plant. So I'm looking for margins of improvements. And during those margins of improvements with our team, with our franchisees, most will level up, some will level out. And so that's what we've done to build this culture of focus, intensity. We're unified. We're honest with each other. We certainly have our clashes, and we make it through somehow. Yeah.
So what have you done for yourself during this period? You know, what's your schedule been like? Have you had to work longer hours? Have you been working out? Have you been resting? What would be a typical week during this 2020?
Things shifted a little bit, so I still wake up early, between 5 and 5:30. That's just my natural wake-up time. Have you seen Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
You know, like one day he just decides he's going to get out and start running, and he like runs to the other side of the country.
Is that like your walk around Chino?
Well, here's what happened. You know, I lift in the mornings, and then in the evenings I go back to my gym. I have a private gym that I built out. I'll go back to my gym with my family and work out together. But my real meathead workout session is in the morning with myself. And as you know, it's part therapeutic and it's just good for you, right? And but one day, after my workout session in the morning, probably mid-April, so about the first month of COVID, I walked out the back door of our gym and I just started jogging. And I hate running. I did that marathon and that was it. I'm done. I checked it off. And so I've been running ever since. I do about 3 miles every other day. And so that's been added to my schedule. Full disclosure, the first 2 or 3 months of COVID, we did lots of hiking outside at night. It was just good to be out in the fresh air, especially during the lockdown. I wanted to defy the powers that be. So I was like, hey, family, we're going to go hike in the hills here. And so we did. But then I'd come home and I'd make myself a couple of stiff cocktails. And I'm not normally a nighttime drinker. But there was a period of time for about 2 months straight I was drinking every night. Not 5 drinks and I'm face down on the carpet, but about 2 stiff cocktails to just take the edge off. And I realized I have this really good self-regulator in me now. And I was like, hey, you're starting to now, this is becoming a routine. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem when you have OCD. Even bad things I can build into my routine. Just to give you an example, a year and a half ago, my doctor's like, hey, your mercury levels are through the roof because there's a sushi restaurant down the street. And I loved it so much, I started going there 3 days a week for 10 years. And so my mercury level, so I can take anything good and 10x it. I can take anything bad and 10x it. And so anyway, I caught myself. But otherwise, Are
you quick, though, once you realize that? Have you got the discipline to say, right, that's gone, and you just cold turkey?
Immediately. Right. Immediately. And the running joke, and I would never do this, but the running joke with my wife is, I sometimes want to see if I can just try heroin, just to cold turkey stop it. But I would never do it. But yeah, with alcohol, with the Adderall. Look, man, there was a time I was like, holy cow, I'm taking Adderall every day now because I was really disciplined. I was taking it twice a week. Then I started upping the dose to every day, increasing the duration to every day, and then started to up the dose. And then, again, the regulator caught on. What am I doing? Went cold turkey. That doesn't mean that I didn't have any, my body didn't react. It did, but I just get angry with myself. And so I go back on track. But otherwise, I still wake up at 5:30, go through my morning routine of 30 ounces of water, protein shake, coffee, open my laptop, do my GSD list, get shit done list that I wrote the night before. I like doing the brain dump the night before because I can sleep better at night. The GSD stuff is all stuff that moves the money needle first. I do all things that move the money needle. Then I work out at 9 a.m. By 9 a.m., I'm in my gym. 9 to 11, I'll work out, mobility, flexibility, 3-mile run. Then I'll come here, shower, and I'm here to serve my team and do stuff like this. Yeah.
And how many hours would you say you're actively working, not necessarily thinking, but actually working?
So about 2.5 hours in the morning. Would you call this work? what we're doing?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay, then another 6 hours here, so 8 hours like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it's not like crazy 14, 16
Not
hours.
anymore.
No.
Not anymore. Like,
do you think you need to do that to get there? Because I know there's a
Yes.
lot of talk about, like working all the hours, but also getting that balance between like burning out and being on the top of your
when
game.
you're trying to build an empire and before you have a massive team like we do, like you have to push yourself, like you have to kiss the burnout wall.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just kiss that burnout wall. You have to. And I've done it. Just writing copy at 2 a.m. when my head's nodding. I remember even waking up and then I was the letter D just across the Word doc. My finger was stuck on the letter D as I was writing copy. Those days are gone for me. I just refuse to do that. And in fact, I recently stopped the mastermind that I run because I realized I just don't even want to dedicate, 3, 6, 9, 3 meetings. I don't want to dedicate 9 days out of the year to a mastermind anymore because my kids are at a fun age, 13 and 15. We're like best friends, and that means 3 times a year for 3 days at a time. I'm not going to work out with them at night, and I don't like that, man. They grow up quickly. You have kids?
Yeah, 9 and 10.
Okay,
yeah,
so
the same now.
Their facial features change. I go on a work trip and I come back and my son's got a square jaw. It's like, what happened? And yeah, so those days are gone. But if I was committed to building another big empire, and I didn't have the amazing, awesome team that I have, I would, without a doubt, be in there. Like, there would be no birthday parties. There would be no weddings to go to. Weekends would be non-existent. You have to pay a price for everything. And if you're not willing to pay the price, get off the field.
How important has your relationship been, and what do you think you'd be if you hadn't have picked the partner that you had?
Man, let me tell you. My wife said it best. She said, I'm a bull in a china closet where I will just go and just create this wake of destruction in a good way. Like, I'll be like, I'm curious. Like, the other day, I had some amazing baklava. A client of mine has a friend who makes this amazing baklava. And since I'm Armenian and I haven't had baklava in a long time, he brought a box during his half-day coaching session. And I was like, this is amazing. He goes, yeah, it's not made with refined sugar. It's made with honey. I'm like, really? Tell me more. By the end of, so then, we did his half-day coaching. I went home that night and I started researching, are there any internet-based mail-order baklava services? And this was whenever he was here, Thursday. Joan can tell us the date. It was like last Tuesday or Thursday. And by this morning, I was already pitching my wife on the idea that we're starting a mail-order baklava service because that's how I roll. And then when I do, I'm going to register. I'm going to text Joan to register the domain name, and I'm going to have somebody find the guy who can make it, and we're going to create this theme behind it, and then we're going to create the Instagram, and very quick. And while I just give the marching orders, my wife and Joan will come behind me and put all that chaos into order. And had I not had a wife like that, I would not be where I am. And I know that for a fact.
You'd be all chaos.
I'd be all chaos. Yeah, I'd have a million things started, but nothing finished.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I've got a couple of questions before I wrap up. But before that, I just where can people find out about you? Talk about your workshop, because that also sounds pretty. Your men's away day
the project,
idea, the project. That sounds pretty awesome. And anything else that you got going on?
So best place to find me is on Instagram. I've become a fan of Instagram, although I'm looking at shifting gears to Parler because of the censorship. But anyway, Instagram at Bedros Keuilian, or just manup.com. And then the project is really a 75-hour men's development program, self-development program for men who are entrepreneurs, married, have kids, and they're suffering in silence, white-knuckling through life. They know they have greater potential. They begin to resent their spouse. They don't have date night anymore. They just feel this tension and they're about to explode. And it is 75 hours of working with myself, a Navy SEAL, a Marine, an MMA fighter, and a SWAT operator, where we pour into these men. And it's not just go out there and pull a truck and sit in ice baths and hike all night. There's plenty of desk time where we journal and we talk about the traumatic events that happen in your life, and we talk about it openly. We get rid of those toxic cognitions. We talk about if someone needs to go seek out a therapist, I'll make the introductions with great therapists that I know. And we really help these men become the best versions of themselves, because women are organically gifted at going out as friends and sitting around a table and drinking wine and openly sharing things. You and I as men we will talk about superficial stuff, like, what's the weather like in Newport Beach? Well, I could just take my iPhone out and see the weather, right? Yet we talk about what's the weather like and very superficial conversation. We will only go deep after we have suffered together in some kind of physical thing. And that's because inside of every man is a warrior, and that warrior must have another man to fight for. And so we create that environment for them. And at hour number 26 of 75, we begin to do as they develop more trust with us and themselves, and they are now more sleep deprived, and we can suspend their disbelief. There's a lot of psychology that plays in this. They begin to become more vulnerable and open as we share our damaging belief systems that we've had and had to overcome as instructors. And we bond. And the experience isn't cheap. It's $12,000 for the 75 hours. Those who graduate are part of a brotherhood that we connect twice a year in person in Las Vegas. Then we're part of a private Facebook group, and we connect all the time. We have like Google executives and a world-renowned poker player. Like some amazing men are in that group, yeah. But or you can just ring the bell and quit. And if you ring the bell and quit, we'll keep your $12,000, and you have a nice day. Yeah.
Fantastic. So final couple of questions then. Failure. I heard that through a lady that you was going after when you was younger, that you failed to attract to go out to a dance with. That was sort of like one of the Nakaya. That was one of the sort of points in your life that created, I guess, or led to create where you were today.
Yeah.
A lot of people at the moment are probably feeling as though they're going through a number of failures in their life. It's a tough time for people. But what's your message about failure? What have you learned, and what, I guess, could you give, advice could you give someone that feels as though they're failing at the moment?
I don't have anything brilliant to say about failure other than you're still going to be alive. You got nothing better to do. Just keep working at it. I mean, that's it, right? So I failed at so many things. But then what am I going to do? Sit down on the couch and watch TV and then what? I'm going to feel horrible about myself. So just get up, and that way didn't work. Try the other way and the other way. Like, I don't have anything brilliant to say about failure other than the only time you can give up is if you die, because then you're not going to feel bad. But otherwise, if you're, maybe I'm just transferring my own feelings, but when I fail at something, and I fail plenty of times, I'm still going to live on. That means I have to be a role model to my son and daughter. I still have to be a provider and a protector to my wife and family. And I still want to be a person who has a sense of significance and fulfillment and contribution to society. So I can't just sit down on the couch and go like, well, it failed. I have to go do something to feel any sense of worth.
Yeah.
So most people are probably cut from that same cloth. So just keep trying. And when you do, you will succeed. It'll just come way later, because we all overestimate how easy it's going to be. And we underestimate how long and difficult it's going to take.
Yeah.
So just know that.
Yeah, I know you've talked about sort of the period of 10 years. And I guess, nowadays people it's like, well, I want it next week or next month or next year.
Yeah. All of us, we're all a decade or more overnight success. I don't know of anyone other than someone who won the lottery who's an overnight success.
Yeah.
Like, for a decade, no one, it's like that bamboo plant, it's like a Chinese bamboo plant where you plant it, and for like 3 years, nothing happens. And then one day it sprouts, and then in a 30-day period goes up by 40 feet. Something's happening under the soil for those years. You just can't see it. So go all in, and for 8, 9, 10 years, nothing's going to happen. But then you're going to have that hockey stick year, and you're going to go, holy smokes. And it's a byproduct of those 9 or 10 years. That wasn't a magical year. It was those magical 9 years that produced that 1 year.
And when I heard you say that, it's a podcast I was listening to, but it kind of made a lot of sense, because a lot of people I talk to are like, well, I don't know what my purpose is. And I think you said something like, well, no, you don't, but you've got to keep working. And after 10 years, you'll probably figure out what it is.
Yeah, you'll develop it. Yeah.
You develop it, yeah.
For me, I was a personal trainer, right? It's like, I just want to help people. I want to train people. And if I could just train one more person, that led to opening up gyms so that I can have personal trainers helping, and now I'm helping more people through those personal trainers. And then that led to opening up Fit Body Boot Camp, and now we're helping, hundreds of thousands of people every morning. But then I realized the thing I love most about personal training is the mental aspect, the mental edge, and the confidence and the self-esteem, the self-awareness that we build. And then I realized that's a more important piece than the physical piece, because if I can build that, I can build the rest. And so I realized my gift is really, so like, look at how my purpose has developed and evolved over time. But if I went from personal training to, now and I love coffee, so now I'm gonna be a barista, and then I love fast cars, so I'm gonna be a mechanic. Like, I would have never developed. You gotta stick to something, and then it will appear. No one sticks long enough, man.
No, that's great advice.
Stick to something, you know? Oh.
And eventually, even if you'll be the only one left, that you'll probably be the
right.
best.
Yeah, if anything, you're the only one left. That's it. That's it.
So final question, Bedros. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and gone to make it possible. Outside of what we've spoken about, what would be a memorable example of escaping your own personal limits?
Well, Matthew, that's a great question. So there's the happy part of it, I can tell you, or there's a part that's really meaningful but a little bit sad. And I think I'm going to tell you that version. And it is that when I was molested as a young boy, and by two older boys, the byproduct of that was, and I only discovered that when I worked with Kevin, my therapist, in my late 30s. So you imagine, for 20 some odd years, I carried that with me. I felt unlovable. I felt broken. I felt unworthy. I didn't let my wife in. I didn't let anyone in. I always felt like all of you were in a room and I was in the hallway just outside that door, is how I felt. And for anyone that's had physical, mental, or sexual abuse, the same part of the brain lights up. The fight or flight area of the brain lights up and stays lit up. And you're always fists up and you have a hard time trusting others. And so you begin to have some level of poor trust towards others, and you don't feel lovable and worthy and deserving. And well, that really dulls the human experience. Mm-hmm. And so the limits that I've been able to break is through the help of a great therapist. And by the way, 1 out of every 3 people have had some kind of physical or mental trauma, and 1 out of every 4 people have had some kind of sexual trauma. So just count the 5 of us in this room. Someone's had something happen, right? And so I share that because, like, you don't have to experience life the way you're experiencing it. You don't have to feel shame. You don't have to feel confused. You don't have to feel unlovable and broken and unworthy and undeserving. And you know, what got you there into it is not going to get you out of it. So you're probably not going to be able to fix it. I tried for 38 years to fix it through alcohol, through drugs, through rage and anger and all this stuff, and it didn't work. And it turns out a therapist can actually help you. And if we can hire coaches to help us with our speech, like I've got a speech coach, we can hire coaches to help us with our nutrition and our diet and our workouts. I hired a coach to teach me how to run a marathon. Then by God, we can hire a coach to help us deal with this head and this heart. They're only 14 inches apart, but sometimes they're like miles apart. And a great therapist can bring those two things and get them to work together so that you are no longer in that hallway. You can come into the room and begin to experience the human experience. And I think that's a magical thing. And I've been very blessed to be able to work with a great therapist. And I think more people ought to seek one out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate some great information there. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Thank you. I appreciate
thank
that.
You, Bedros.
Yes, sir.